Are there any classical quantum mechanics in quantum computing that you talk or that you know about, or is it all just sort of computational concepts? Are you strange or charmed?
Look, sometimes you can be both strange and charmed at the same time.
Are you up or down right now?
I'm more of a top.
I've heard that about you.
Brad, I have read so much about quantum computers over the last, let's say, 3 days.
Yeah, we had an episode planned here.
Ask me what my relative comprehension level is.
Give me a percentage.
0.0001%.
Man. And you're like pretty good at integrating information once you track it down.
The more I get into it, honestly, the best thing that I read about it was a cartoon that somebody sent me on Twitter today when I asked if people had good reads on quantum computing. And they were like, I'm kind of joking, but this is the best thing I've read so far in explaining why this is so confusing. And it's not like everything you know about superpositions is a lie. It's all just amplitudes, man. It's amplitudes all the way down.
Everything is just a waveform.
No, it depends on what kind of space you're talking about. It's not a Euclidean space waveform. It's like
oh my god.
Yeah, it's
okay.
It's
nope. I can't do this. It's too late at night for this.
Have you ever seen Scanners? That's what I felt like all the last 3 days. I was sitting in the dark on Saturday when the power was out, reading about quantum mechanics and quantum computing. I was like, I don't think I can understand this, man.
It's a good way to break your head clean open.
Yeah. Hey everybody, it's Sunday and it's time. Wait, that's the way you guys. Let me just do it the other way. I listened.
No, you already started. Just keep going.
Damn it! It's time for Brad and Will made a tech pod. I'm Will.
I'm Brad. It's Sunday. It's wherever you are.
Yeah. Look, it's Sunday somewhere. It's like Jimmy Buffett says.
Yep. Always.
Well, so legitimately, we were going to do the quantum computing thing, and then it turns out it is a really complicated, confusing topic. And
hang on, I'm going to put my hands around my mouth here.
Yeah.
Quantum supremacy.
Yeah. It's all about amplitudes, man. That's all I know. And I think that might be the first time we need to consult an expert and bring somebody in here who really knows what they're doing and understands multi-positional plane space and Neiman Marcus and let's see what else, multiple factor quantum. I don't know, man. It was confusing. I'll post a link to the comic that I found very informative in the show notes because that was the best thing I read. And maybe a couple of blog posts, and we'll come back to quantum computing at some point in the not too distant future, I hope.
Yeah, I've only done the barest amount of reading about quantum mechanics in general, and it is already the most mind-bending subject I think I've ever tried to tackle. So
yeah,
applying that practically to computing sounds like a nightmare.
I did a bunch of that stuff when I was in college. I did quantum computing stuff. Quantum mechanics stuff is stuff that I had quantum mechanics classes in college 20 years ago. So I understand a little tiny bit about it, but the fundamental idea, the thing that in a Michael Crichton book would be explained as, well, the quantum computer just solves all of the equations at once and then the state collapses and the answer comes out. Or if it was a Neil Stephenson book, it would be that the only universe you're in is the one where the quantum computer solves the answer correctly and all the other universes just poof, stopped existing, which is really dark. Neither of those are right. The answer is that you have to set up a problem in a way that the two competing negative and positive probabilities collapse in on each other and counteract each other. And only the right answer will will reinforce rather than collapsing.
I'm just smiling and nodding right now.
And I don't really know what that means. Yeah, no, that's the right answer. It's really terrible. It is in order to get to this point, I had to spend 2 days reading about what Turing machines were and how they work. And I don't know how we make that 45 minutes. So yeah, we're punting. And today, instead, we're going to do emails.
Emails. I mean, it's also Extra Life Week. We've got a lot going on. There's
Oh yeah, shit.
a lot of time commitments have been made this week.
But
so
no,
we're
it's
gonna-
Sunday, dude. We're done. Extra Life is done. We finished it.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
How do you feel? You've been streaming for 25 straight hours. Where are you going to Disney World?
I feel like maybe starting this podcast record at 9:00 on Sunday morning, right after I got done with Extra Life, was not the best idea. I'm real sleepy, Brad.
I'm impressed. You're soldiering through.
I couldn't believe that we made it through 18 hours of Garfield Kart, though. That was really amazing to me.
Things you do for the kids.
Hell of a game. What's our this is the podcast equivalent of a clip show, but let's
This is new material. A clip show is the thing you do when the writers are on strike and you can't produce new material
That's true.
and you have to go back into the archives. I mean, these questions are yet unasked and unanswered.
I love a clip show. I love a capsule episode where it's just like
Wait, do you actually like clip shows? Does anybody on the planet like a clip show?
the 138th episode spectacular done by The Simpsons in the 8th season, hosted by Troy McClure. One of the greatest clip show episodes of all time.
Okay, but you need a really good frame
Yeah.
for the clips to land properly. And Troy McClure,
Yeah. The great Phil Hartman.
God rest his soul.
Rest in peace. What's our first question, Brad?
Okay.
What you got?
What's our email address again?
Oh, it is techpod@content.town.
Right.
It's the same as the URL, but with an @ instead of a period.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's very efficient.
Yeah.
That's where these emails came into. Here's the first one I have. Jackson wrote in, could y'all talk about Y2K? I was in college and I wasn't paying much attention, but there seemed to be a sense of hysteria in the air that the world would end once the year rolled over from 1999 to 2000. Where were you when all this happened, and did it affect you in any way? Will there be the same hype when 2038 rolls around?
I had a job. My first job out of college really was a large portion of it was updating computers and all of the weird shit that you find in a university biology department for Y2K. It was like Windows NT machines and Windows 95 machines, and then a bunch of like network connected printers. And like the thing you don't realize is everything connected to the network has a clock. So all of that stuff has to be updated. And there were a few thousand of those devices at the time. It would be a nightmare now, but it was one of those things that like wasn't a problem because people worked really hard for 3 or 4 years around the world to make sure that it wasn't a problem, right?
Okay, so you've kind of answered the question that I wanted to bring to this email, which because I've for whatever reason I've been thinking about Y2K again recently, and I've seen it said. Or let me back up. The conventional wisdom I feel like about Y2K is that it was a big to do about nothing. That everybody is just everybody's of the mind that like nothing happened, so it can't have been a big deal.
Yeah.
Whereas my suspicion started to be maybe it's not a big deal because people did all the legwork to make it not a big deal. Like, is that the case? Like, did it really take that much elbow grease and ingenuity to prevent it from creating a calamity? Or was it not a big deal in the first place?
So yeah, if you think about this, like computers were just beginning to get mainstream in 2000, right? So, or in 90, the late 90s. So like Windows 95 came out, and Windows 95 was a really big deal. Like they sold a ton of copies of Windows 95, but they also sold a shitload of computers that had Windows 95 installed. And most of them were like static desktop machines, and they were only loosely connected to the internet. Like they had a dial-up modem or something like that. So like downloading updates for Windows was challenging. They were very small. They were like tiny diff patches to upgrade stuff. And you wouldn't have Windows 10 style twice a year, huge multi-gigabyte download that completely changed the OS in key ways. So like updating computers was hard. Usually you would go and get a disk. Like you would go to Best Buy and they'd have free disks there with whatever the latest big security patch was, and you could put those on, or AOL would put them on their disks, or magazines would put them on their disks. And like a lot of it was just, and also worth mentioning, I don't remember for sure, but I don't think Windows 95 had like a built-in Windows Update tool. I think you downloaded Windows Update and installed it.
Oh, I definitely don't think it did.
I don't think that became standard until like Windows 2000 or maybe even later than that.
Yeah, I would believe that.
So yeah, like it was a nascent IT industry. Like IT was a relatively new, like the idea that you needed somebody in your office to make the computers run was a kind of new idea. I mean, big companies had that, but small businesses absolutely didn't have an IT team. They would maybe pay a guy that came in a couple of days a month and changed the toner in the printer and hooked up whatever new computers you had and took the old ones away. But it wasn't like a dedicated position for most people. And so, yeah, a lot of it was on people's hands. So it's like two things. The computers didn't update themselves. There was nobody there to do it. So there was a big push. And also, like quantum computing, the people selling news, like the people on TV news and local news and newspapers and magazines that weren't like computer magazines, had no fucking clue. Like they were just like, oh, new apocalypse, time to move some copies.
Yep.
So yeah, like
Financial industry about to collapse. You won't be able to get money out of the ATM. Stuff it in your mayonnaise jar.
yeah, the transformers are going to explode. Yeah. So yes, it was definitely overhyped. However, the people that were in charge of the important stuff, like the command and control systems for power grid and for air traffic control and for train routing and for, all of the things that make civilization work, were on top of it. And then everybody else had Windows updates and people like me running around with floppy disks, jamming them to computers and installing the BIOS patches and stuff like that.
Well, thank you for your service.
Hey,
You saved the world.
and the best thing about Y2K is that without Y2K, we would have never had Office Space.
It made a valid contribution to pop culture.
Yeah.
Do you know what he's talking about in 2038? I feel like I've heard that year referenced before, but I can't remember what what's the new impending doom.
I think 2038 is when the Unix clock rolls over. So
Yes.
the reason Y2K was a big deal is we started out with like people only, if you don't know what Y2K was because you're like 8 years old,
God help me.
Y2K was a thing that happened because in the early days when memory was expensive, we only used two numbers to represent the year. So when the year went from 1999 to 2000, a lot of computers were theoretically going to think that it was 1900. And that's bad for a whole multitude of reasons, because then, if you've ever tried to log into a Windows computer with a computer where the date's not set right, it doesn't generate the right hashes and the login process doesn't work because the cryptography doesn't work. So the concern was that like the power grid would stop talking to some parts of the power grid would stop talking to other parts of the power grid. And since that thing's all held together with baling twine and spit, the lights would turn off on major portions of the country. Now, it turns out all you need to turn off the lights on major portions of the country is really high winds and 20 or 30 years of neglect. But we didn't know that at the time. So it seemed like a really big deal.
You can burn a whole state down.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great. Everybody should move to California. It's terrific out here.
So you're right. I just checked to make sure. And Tuesday, January the 19th, 2038 at 3:14 and 7 seconds is the last time that the current Unix time format can function.
And that's because Unix time formats are seconds from the origin of the Unix inception, the first inception of Unix, and that's how many bits the number has, right? I think.
I'm gonna say sure. It's a signed 32-bit integer time format. I can tell you that.
Yeah. So it's like, yeah. Anyway, yeah. Look, computers update themselves now. That'll be a problem. That's not a problem that normal people are going to worry about.
Probably not. Also, I can't even imagine what the world looks like in 2038. So
drive up north about an hour and you'll get a pretty good idea.
That is definitely the darkest thing that's ever been said on this podcast.
Hey, I mean, it's the 8th episode. This is when we go dark.
Oh man, the one where we go dark.
I literally spent all weekend without power, Brad. I've been dark.
Yeah, okay, you've been there.
My life has been dark.
No, you've earned it. You've come by it honestly, for sure.
I wanted to play Modern Warfare and the Outer Worlds, and I sat instead on my phone, hoarding every percentage of battery,
every precious drop.
Yeah, and then the cell towers went off, and I was just like, "Well, fuck it, let's just go eat raccoons or something."
What is your power outage fallback plan? Like, do you have stuff stashed around the house? Like, what kind of light? Like, I assume you have something more high tech than candles for lighting. I mean, what's going on over there?
Well, so we have a bunch of those LED candles. Is this from Brad in San Francisco, by the way?
Yes, that's. Yep.
This is okay. We have a bunch of those LED candles that you get at Target for that use a CR 2032 watch battery, and they do 100 hours. So those are like our nighttime around the house lights. We have a couple of like $15 emergency / camping solar lanterns that have like a little solar panel on the top. And they'll do anywhere from 8 to 14 hours of light on a single day on like 7 hours of charge. So they're awesome for like survival kit and camping. I have, for a while you would go to conferences and get those battery backups for your phones. So I have a bunch of those around that I charged up beforehand. and I have a solar, like a 4-pane solar panel that'll do 28 watts of charging in a normal day at our latitude. So they'll, like, between all of those things and low power mode on your phone, like, we kept the tech going the whole time the power was off.
Okay, that's not so bad.
Yeah, but then the cell towers went out. It didn't matter because a phone without a cell tower, it turns out, is just it's basically there to play Sayonara. The Sayonara. What do you call it?
Sayonara Wild Hearts. Yep.
Sayonara Wild Hearts.
Yep. Well, that game's about 45 minutes or an hour long, so I'm sure that ate up a whole. How many days were you out actually?
We were out for a little bit over 2 days, so it wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
It was the problem. The challenge was that PG&E, our power company here, kept saying that it was going to go back down again the day after it came back up. So, like, for us, the bigger problem was keeping, like, the freezer cold and the fridge cold and stuff like that, so that we wouldn't have to either eat or throw out all of our food.
Great. Fun times in California.
Yeah.
Here.
It's great.
It's great.
Highly recommended.
It's a good time. I have another email here from Trevor.
Okay.
Trevor says, why is Microsoft backwards with slashes? Windows file paths use backslash to separate directories, but no one else does. Websites, Unix, and Mac systems all use forward slash. Why did Microsoft decide to be so contrarian and to go backwards?
So, according to howtogeek.com, there's an article called Why Windows Uses Backslashes and Everything Else Uses Forward Slashes. It is because with DOS 1.0, there were no directories at all.
Okay.
So there was no file system. It was all just flat. Because basically you're running everything on a floppy. So
sure.
You didn't do folders or directories or whatever. So they used the forward slash as a switch character for commands. So you could do directory/W and it would show you everything, like the big format with permissions and all that stuff in it. When they added directory structure in a later version of DOS, they couldn't use that slash for the file system, the forward slash for the file system, because it would mess up all the backwards compatibility with the old stuff. So they just did a backslash, and they didn't think it was going to be a problem, because who would think that 30 years in the future, Windows computers and Linux computers and Unix computers would all be connected to each other over a massive worldwide computer network.
They did not expect to become the dominant player in computing for the next 30 years.
They did not. This was surprisingly difficult to Google also, because there were a bazillion Stack Overflow things talking about URIs, which is the solve for this thing. URI, Universal Resource something or other, is basically set standards for how you access files on the hard drive, how you access files across HTTP, how you access files on FTP and FTPS, and all the different specs that you might use. And they use the proper forward slash for file structure.
Yeah. But I mean, this makes perfect sense to me, because to this day, in fact, basically all of the built-in Windows command line utilities still use a forward slash for their switches.
Yep. Well, and the interesting thing is, on more recent version of Windows, you can use, it doesn't matter when you're doing file commands which direction you make the slash. It works either way.
Oh, yeah. I did not know that.
For flags, it does. For switches, it does. But if you type like CD and you do the wrong slash, it'll be fine. It works either way.
Okay, sure. That's good to know.
I should check that right now, because I haven't done that in a long time. But
do you spend much time in a Windows command line these days?
Not if I can help it.
I've become reacquainted with it. I've gotten a little into Robocopy here and there.
Oh, yeah, it works. Oh, nope, it fails now. Okay, never mind.
Oh, wow. Okay.
What I just said was a lie. It's wrong.
Okay. Yes, disregard that and all other advice distributed on this podcast.
Podcast of lies.
Yeah. Here is a question from kind of a couple questions from Jim in Minnesota.
Hi, Jim.
A few years ago, I read a story about Amazon having problems with fake reviews and a couple of people doing some data analysis to help determine which reviews are valid and which are fake. Since the Wirecutter can't possibly cover everything on Amazon, most of us rely on user reviews as a way to determine if a product is worth it or not. Can you help me understand the problem of fake reviews and what might be being done about it?
Well, we know that, Republicans hate fake reviews, and wait, no, that's something else that rhymes with use. So the fake reviews is a real thing. Like, apparently you can go on dark websites or wherever you go to buy fake reviews of apps and stuff like that, and just buy Amazon reviews for your product by the dozen.
Oh, in bulk?
Yeah.
Wow, I did not realize it had been commoditized to that extent. Like, it's basically buying Twitter followers at this point.
Yeah, it's Amazon. Like, I have a real hard relationship with Amazon in general, because, like, I'm sure that they have people there that care about that stuff. It isn't visible at all to the outside, partly because I think they don't want to like hurt consumer confidence in their product. But like between that and counterfeit products on Amazon, it's challenging. I mean, there's the message board stories that you hear about a guy that bought a expensive video card, got a cheap video card in the box, and then they wouldn't take it back because they're like, you probably, it's a,
who's to say you didn't swap it yourself?
Yeah, exactly. And since a lot of how they verify whether things are the thing in the box is by weight, like if you find something that's exactly the same weight and you ship it back, they're never going to know until they send it out to some poor schmuck who gets the 10-year-old video card by accident. So I tend not to trust user reviews on big sites. I really like user reviews on small sites, like on small stores. Like an Etsy review, I feel is very trustworthy.
Okay, yeah, like that's a pretty passionate community, pretty devoted to the service and the platform.
Yeah. I think finding quality reviews is hard, right? That is like, it used to be that there were 3 or 4 sites that were really good that reviewed hardware, PC hardware, and you could trust them. And now all the people that started those sites work at other places now, either the manufacturers or whatever. And the people that remain are good, but I don't know that there's any clearinghouse of a place that reviews even stuff in a specific niche. So like on one hand, you think, oh, you should trust the niche sites because those guys know what they're talking about. But then keyword farm niche sites, like if you look for camera lenses for like DSLRs, those keywords are so effectively farmed by what are essentially like content farm blogs to just generate keyword pages with the right keywords to like generate Amazon affiliate links to sell those lenses to you. Like those, I don't trust those people. Those people clearly don't know what the hell they're talking about. So yeah. I just find a friend who writes for one of those sites and then asks them.
It's good to know people.
Yeah, it's not actionable information at all.
Yeah, that's not helpful on a broad scale, but if you can get there, then it helps.
Message boards are great. Is that what I will say?
Yeah, communities.
Yeah,
of real people for sure. Yeah, Amazon definitely has reached a scale where I feel like the overall quality of the user experience is being impacted, and that's on top of like their foul labor standards in a lot of cases as well. Like it's becoming harder and harder to feel good about doing any kind of commerce with them.
On the other hand, when the power was out and we ordered a solar panel charger from them, it was there later that day. So
yeah, that's the thing. I mean, they're in some cases they are so indispensable that it's hard not to use them. You know,
yeah,
which is I'm sure exactly the position they wanted to get everybody in.
Yeah, 21st century Sears.
Yeah, it is surprisingly hard to find good information on tech products that you would think would be fairly well covered. Like I'm trying to buy some. I'm kind of interested in getting some true wireless earbuds at this point. You know, like
no dangling cable between them.
Actual loosies. Just no wire whatsoever.
Okay.
And I don't want to spring for AirPods or Beats Pros right now.
Yeah.
I've got a soapbox right here if you want me to get up on it for a second and understand why I'm picky about my Bluetooth headphones.
Yeah, why? I'm curious.
I don't really want to sink a lot of money into Bluetooth headphones while I'm an iPhone person for a very long time. I'm in that ecosystem, but the iPhone still does not support high-end Bluetooth codecs, so I don't really understand the point in buying nice headphones until that comes online.
Is there stuff better than? I didn't know there was stuff better than A2GP.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, there are. I'll have to look. I think one of them is by Qualcomm. I should have looked into this before we did this, but there are Bluetooth audio standards that'll do quality that's basically CD level at this point.
Oh,
like bit rates like way up like five. So they vary based on signal quality, but I think the highest quality standard is like 500 to 900 kilobits at this point.
Oh, that's good. So if you're doing lossless, yeah,
it's enough. Yeah, it's enough for lossless. It's enough for FLAC basically without compressing further.
Yeah, the knock against Bluetooth is that you rely on instead of using you're basically just sending a bit stream across, but you're making it analog and then making it digital again with probably a bad codec or something across the Bluetooth is the idea.
I mean, the iPhone uses AAC, which tops out at 256 kilobit, which is not terrible.
Oh.
And you're listening on like not the highest quality headphones to begin with, so I'm sure you could argue that I'm being obsessive, but anyway, whatever. I'm off on a huge tangent here, but the point is I was looking into like there's a lot of kind of semi no-name true wireless earbuds coming out of like Shenzhen at this point.
Yeah, there's a boatload of them. Yeah,
right. Like they're everywhere, and they're like some that have enough of a name recognition now that people even like are getting interested in reviewing them here and there.
Well, so I bought a pair of those the Anker Liberty ones, the first ones that they did. I think they did a Kickstarter for them, and they were like, I bought them before I bought my AirPods. And they're great. They sound really good. They're comfortable. The battery lasts a long time. The case is unwieldy and not ideal, but like I was really happy with them. And the only reason I switched to the AirPods is because I got I left the Ankers at home when I was on a trip by accident, and I was at one of those Best Buy kiosks in the airport, and I was like, I bought headphones before I got on this airplane, so here we are.
Understandable.
Yeah,
these are about $100. It looks like.
I think I think they just released a second gen version of them. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I mean, they don't. I don't know what audio codecs they support. I made an impulse purchase on Kickstarter because I was curious to see. I was still tested when I ordered them, and I thought, oh, this will be a weird thing to cover.
Yeah.
And then I quit between then and when they came out. So,
I mean, you're starting to see a bunch of, again, just sticking with the wireless earbuds, like you're starting to see a bunch in the $40 to $50 price range at this point that look decent. It's really hard to find good non-user review driven coverage of those, but maybe that's because they're so cheap nobody cares enough to produce it.
Well, I mean, this is one of those places where word of mouth is really good. Like I remember probably in the late 90s or early 2000s, one of the first things I bought because of the internet were these Radio Shack indoor outdoor like bookshelf speakers. And they were the speakers I took to college with me when I had them probably in my bedroom when I was in high school, but I think they were college mostly. And they were like $25 each at Radio Shack. And they had just accidentally made some really fucking awesome little tiny speakers. Yeah. It's like the what was it? The Altic Lansing ACS, the Altic Lansing bookshelf speakers that had the wood cabinets, or those Cambridge Soundworks cubes that everybody loved in the early 2000s.
Yes, I've got a pair of those on my desk right now.
Yeah, like word of mouth is good for that stuff. So find a message board where people are like, the trick is you don't want to go to like I love the HeadFi people because they're bananas and they really get into stuff, but like they're too far. Like they're more information than I need. I just want something that's really good and the right price. And I don't need it to be like the optimal best ever. I just need to like the word of mouth on the good thing.
Yes, that I live for discovering that product, like the thing that is good enough and a good price and like well made and is going to last.
Yeah.
I don't want to buy the $250 Beats Pros. I want to find the thing that is like quietly said to be, hey, this is the actual best bang for the buck. Like it's half the price, but way better than half the quality.
So there's another option. There's a third way, Brad.
Okay.
You could go to Banggood.
So, oh, dude, I have gone down that road. Like replica electronics is a whole other category of insanity to get into.
Yeah,
I mean, like if you want no name earbuds that look exactly like AirPods, you can absolutely have them, but
for like $15.
But yeah, totally. But you're maybe going to deal with a guy who is only known by his first name.
Perfect.
To try to get them shipped to you, and like they might have to go through customs. Like that scene is really bizarre.
No. Banggood. See, this is why I like Banggood.
Oh, I know they're a middleman. I know that they ease that process a little bit.
Everything ships from they tell you whether it's going to ship from the US or from China.
Right.
So you know how much of a customs hassle you're going to have and the likelihood of your stuff getting stuck there. The thing about buying stuff from those sites is that they let's say on occasion I have bought, say, tiny quadcopters or something, and the works to doesn't work ratio is usually like, I don't know, to 3 to 1.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I had to realize finally that the sticker price was not necessarily all of the risk that I was taking on.
Yeah, if you buy 2, usually you get one that works. That's
right.
You're pretty safe there.
Maybe I'll at least get one good left one and one good right one out of both packages, and then I can
exactly. They'll look just like AirPods. Probably even have the same shell.
Yeah, man, that replica stuff, and you can get AirPods that are black. You know, like Apple doesn't even make that. It's like, oh man, I can get this thing. I can make people think that I have some super top secret Apple prototype or something.
I'm ready to go. Put me in, Coach.
It's yeah, we should just order a bunch of that stuff and mess around with it sometime.
Oh my God, that's a live stream.
Yeah. All right. Let's go do a few more emails here. Here's one from Aaron. I keep seeing ads from every major network about 5G. He means cell networks, obviously.
Yeah.
But I don't really have a grasp on what that means in practical terms over 4G LTE. I also can't get a good sense of when it will be readily available. What is it? How do you think it will impact phones? Do you think it will do anything to provide an alternative to the abysmal internet speeds that people in more rural parts of the country are forced to have?
So 5G is the next wireless cell phone standard. It's in a limited number of areas right now in the United States and around the world.
I didn't know it had been rolled out in any capacity.
Yeah, so let's see, I'm on the Wikipedia looking at the page because it turns out Wikipedia is the best place for this. So Atlanta, Chicago, Dallas, Houston, Indianapolis, Jacksonville. It looks like it's like top 15 markets now, maybe.
Okay, and I also didn't realize there were phones out there that really supported it, but I guess there are so many Android phones coming out all the time now that it's not super surprising.
That's it. There's a handful of Android phones that support it. The first rev. So here's the thing about like the jump from 3G to LTE was really huge. If you remember, like we went from like having just spent a weekend with 3G service, we went from like bad DSL to like a pretty good broadband, right? Like mid 2000s broadband. With the jump from 3G to LTE. The jump from 4G to 5G is not as big. And that's because we're at a thing called the Shannon limit for 4G already, for LTE. The Shannon limit, this is one of my favorite, this is an amazing concept. The Shannon limit is the theoretical maximum information transfer rate of the channel for a particular noise level. So that looks at like the radio equipment. It looks at the width of your channel, like how many megahertz wide your channel is. And it says, okay, this is as much information as we can jam into this radio pipe, theoretically, including the amount of data we need for error correction and resends and stuff like that. And 4G is very, very efficient when it comes to the Shannon limit, is my understanding. So at least in the existing spectrum. So 5G works at different spectrums up to millimeter wave, which is like 14 gigahertz, I think. A millimeter wave means it's the wavelength of the radio is millimeters rather than micrometers or nanometers, or I guess that's right.
Is that why line of sight is such a problem for 5G and penetration through physical objects?
Well, that's it. That's exactly it. Yeah. So the millimeter wave doesn't penetrate walls, and it doesn't penetrate metal at all. But most solid surfaces it doesn't penetrate if there's water in them. So you end up having to have a lot more cells to get the full speed. The thing that's going to happen with 5G, it seems like, is it's fast enough. It is significantly faster because they're doing a bunch of other stuff with the radios that we'll talk about when we do the Wi-Fi 6 episode, because it's a lot of the same stuff. But they're doing like they're letting you do antenna bonding and stuff like that you can't really do on 4G, or isn't part of the spec on 4G, so that it can combine multiple 5G channels into really, really big pipes for like a home install, for 5G home install internet. The other thing is that the latency is supposed to be lower than they're getting on this first gen hardware. So it's supposed to be like 4 milliseconds air latency, which is the latency from the device to the tower. And that'll add on top of your normal network lag. Like when we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, but like the latency it takes to go from your router to the endpoint and back, that 4 seconds will add on. And they're actually seeing like 10 or 15, which is like an order of magnitude worse than they were hoping for. So there's a lot to figure out. I think it's early. It also is dramatically impacting battery life. So I think that's probably why Apple didn't roll it in this gen, in the 11 hardware that rolled out a couple of months ago.
They always tend to wait until standards are a little more mature.
Yeah,
and I would assume like the radios, or there aren't even discrete radio chips anymore. I mean, it's all SoC.
It's all in the SoC.
Phones, but I would assume that will get a lot more power efficient over time, right?
It always does. Yeah, if you think back to like the first 4G phones, the LTE phones, it's bad. So the other thing is AT&T is using some bullshit marketing stuff, and they're calling their fast LTE 5G, which it is not. So if you're seeing somebody advertising, I think I saw it during the World Series earlier tonight, not to just throw back the curtain and show when we're really recording this. They had T-Mobile had some 5G ads that I don't even think I saw them call them 5G. I think they were just talking about them being higher frequency. So
do you think 5G, or maybe where I'm getting ahead of our Wi-Fi 6 conversation, which probably will happen in the fairly near future, but do either of these technologies seem like a good candidate for maybe like a municipal internet rollout? Like a citywide wireless type thing, like something that's a little more localized and not trying to cover such a wide area as like a typical cell tower.
Well, so there's a lot of people, especially in rural areas, doing 4G to the home deployments, which are really robust and good. My parents have one of those in Virginia, and it's Like it is. I haven't used it in person. I'm going to use it next month, so I'll let you know.
And that's just internet for the entire house, for the whole home network.
Yeah, it's internet for the entire house, but instead of using like a little MiFi or something like a pocket hotspot, you have a fixed antenna that aims directly at the tower, and then they just dedicate a cell to you. So like if the provider says, I mean, it depends on the region how they're setting it up. I've seen some providers that are setting it up with like unlimited bandwidth because they just say, look, you have this cell and this is all you. So, the problem with all cell networks is that you're shared with everybody else that's connected to that cell at that moment. But in terms of a cell network, like a tower can have 50 or 100 cells on it in some cases. So like it as always, it depends on how they implement, but it seems like, yes, it will be better for things like that, both in terms of the throughput, the reliability, and a bunch of other things.
How about this one from Bobby in Texas?
Hi, Bobby.
This is a...
Well, you got to do the voice. If it's Bobby, you got to do the King of the Hill voice.
Howdy, Bobby.
Yeah, exactly.
This is a two-parter. First part, if each of you could sit down with one person for a lengthy podcast or video interview, who would you want to chat with? Second part, if you could shadow one person or group of people for a day to pick their brain and get hands-on with their job without worrying about turning it into content, who would that be?
Oh, man. Okay, second part first. I've done the thing that I would want to do, and I would do it again in a heartbeat. But I a couple times at Tested, we got to spend like days with astronauts and just sitting down and like asking. I literally, you know how like when you're talking to a little kid and they find out that you play video games for a living.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, they have a million questions and they just don't ever stop. I did that to Chris Hadfield for maybe 3 hours one afternoon when we were on a shoot.
Wow.
And we were just talking about flying airplanes and space. And I was just like, is it okay if I just ask you a bunch of questions? He's like, yeah, sure, go for it. And it was like, I learned so much about the reality of space travel. Like, there's other people that tell this story too, and I've seen it on like TED Talks and stuff. But the calluses on the bottom of your feet when you stop walking on them when you're in microgravity fall off. And he told me,
wow,
like he showed me the way that they take socks off so that like the sloughing off skin doesn't just float around the space station and get inhaled. There's a process. There's a process for everything on the space station.
That's incredible.
We talked about I think it's like 13 core functionality emergencies that every single person that goes to the station for an extended period of time is trained to repair, including like spacewalks and the whole thing. Like they all do. When the ammonia system leaked a few years ago, that was one of them. That was like one of the only times it's actually come up in the day to day. But yeah, it was fascinating. And when you have access to like an expert at that level to talk about like whether it's flying one of the hundreds of planes that he's checked out to fly, or like what the difference between riding in a Soyuz and riding in a space shuttle is, or whatever. It's astounding. It's really fun.
That's really cool. If I were to do like for a for public consumption interview or podcast or something, I would love to talk to the lead engineer on kind of name just about any video game console.
Oh man.
Like you see, I feel like Mark Cerny is the big contemporary example around the PlayStation 4 and the forthcoming PS5. Like I've seen the name Boyd Molterer at Microsoft. He was the lead engineer on the Xbox One and maybe also the 360.
Okay.
Or he was up there on the 360. Like the person whose job it is to architect that thing and steer that ship from kind of inception and early R&D right up to production and launch, because it seems like such a moving target. I've heard enough stories behind the scenes over time about like changes in supply chain coming online at the last minute, changing how the thing got built or like how much memory it had, and bets that were placed years before the hardware even existed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It seems like such a tricky, like a tightrope to walk to get one of those things designed and like predict trends ahead of time and get it all done. And I would love to dig into that with somebody who had kind of controlled that whole process.
Well, then like the manufacturing process, which is part of that too, is like I know how hard it is to make a simple hardware product. I can't imagine how hard it is to get the manufacturing right. I mean, we know how hard it is because like we're on like the 9th console generation or something now. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, like I have to imagine like the known knowns of a game console design, like heat dissipation and stuff, and like you're trying to come in at a certain price point, like basically making a powerful computer in a tiny box for not much money is already really hard.
Yeah.
But then like I guess what you would call the known unknowns of trying to predict like user habits years in advance and like what kinds of I'm trying to think of an example. Like the PS4 records what you're doing all the time, and they had to build hardware in years before that thing launched to handle the like encoding and writing of that video, around the clock. As long as you're using that thing, it's writing video to some kind of cache somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And like they had to conceive of subsystems to handle all that stuff before they really knew that it was going to be something people even wanted.
Or was that a thing that came free because it was just built into the NVIDIA chipset because H.264 encode was built into all the NVIDIA chipsets, right? Or ATI chipsets.
Right, and those are the exact kind of scenarios that I would love to hear about. Like this thing with like the hyperfast SSDs may be the same thing, right? Of like, oh, whatever SoC they're getting just happens to be able to handle like a PCIe 4.0.
Yeah, it has an NVMe slot, right? Yeah, or NBA driver.
Some of that stuff is just coming for free. Who knows? But that's the type of stuff I would love to pick somebody's brain about that had the kind of bird's eye view on that whole project from start to finish.
I love those books and the podcast series and articles and stuff. Like the anything that goes through the big decisions that were made at a big podcast at a big product, like over the course of that lifespan, like the stuff Dean Takahashi's done over the years.
Yeah, I feel like an idiot for not having read Takahashi's books on the two Xboxes.
Yeah, he did them on the first one and the 360, right? Not on the one.
Right. Yeah. I believe that's right.
I feel like I read the 360 one, and it's just such an exercise in compromise. All of that stuff, I can't even imagine. I would love to talk to the people who made Windows Vista.
Oh man, jeez, wow. You're just talking about one nightmare scenario after another. The 360 and Vista are probably two of the most catastrophic launches at that scale in history.
Well, but like Vista was bad because it was bad, and the Xbox 360 had failure problems, but at least it was selling and people liked it.
Oh yeah, the 360 was a quality product that just was not.
It had a fatal flaw.
They rushed. It was a good platform that was rushed to market and compromised on the reliability end. Whereas Vista is just broadly hated by everybody.
Well, but like they made like Vista and Windows 8 are kind of similar, right? They both like they made forward-looking decisions that had some sort of fundamental flaw that probably the people who were actually making the product were aware of. Like I know that Sinofsky and his team, when they were making Windows 8, were like, nobody's going to want this shitty start screen, right? Like they built a really good core underpinning, and then they were hampered by what I assume was a political decision from the top of the company. And like that has like, so I can only assume that Sinofsky has a book in him when he gets to the point that his NDAs don't matter anymore. Because I would love to hear about both of those products in a big way. Because like Windows 10, Windows 8, basically the same underpinnings at the launch of Windows 10. They just fixed the UI problems and fixed a couple of core like low end stuff that nobody knows about.
So I'm sure everybody remembers the core theme or kind of philosophy of Windows 8 was merger of desktop and mobile or tablet.
Yeah, it's the thing that literally no one asked for.
Right. But so do you remember, was there a similar design philosophy around Windows Vista? Like that was the successor to XP, right? But like, I don't remember at the time them giving a strong pitch about like, here is what the future of Windows is and here's what we're building it around.
So the setup was that they were going to fix all of the security, like the fundamental security underpinning flaws of pre-Windows Vista, frankly, Windows. Like there was no user mode. Like the problem was that everything ran as admin on XP, which meant that when your system was infected with a worm that got through the firewall because there was a bug in the firewall, then every single thing on your computer was immediately owned.
Right. And that's the problem that was fixed in Unix systems decades ago, right?
I mean, from the beginning with Unix systems, because they were always designed to be shared. Like Unix was designed to be shared and Windows was designed to be personal. So
yeah, they always had a discrete user space, right?
Exactly. So midway through Windows XP's life cycle, they had to completely stop everything they were doing on the next OS, is my understanding. I don't know if this is true or not, but this is what I've always been told. And dedicate massive resources to SP2, which was the one that fixed all of like the worm stuff. And I can't remember the specifics. I don't think it added UAC yet, the thing that pops up and says, hey, are you sure you want to do this? But it solved a lot of those problems and prevented the worms and all of the self-propagating viruses and stuff that were spreading on Windows from getting worse. And then like the original plan with Longhorn, what became Vista, was that it was supposed to include like next gen file systems and all sorts of other stuff. And then either the computers weren't fast enough to run it, they didn't have enough memory, or it just didn't work. So they pulled all that stuff out. And I think they rewrote Vista twice, maybe. Like they literally started it over post SP2 and then started over again when the file system stuff was going to be broken, or did significant do-overs.
Just a very troubled project then.
It was in a lot of ways it was the victim of the success of XP. I knew that they were like, the other thing to remember is that XP is when the hockey puck on PC adoption, when it got to that horizontal to vertical shift on the PC adoption hockey puck. It's when laptops became popular. It's when everybody got Wi-Fi. All of that stuff happened at the same time, and PCs got cheap, and it caused a massive, massive uptick in adoption. So like, the target was bigger and they hadn't really paid attention to security because they hadn't had to. And there were a bunch of other problems, but like, a lot of it is on Microsoft making bad short-term decisions or bad long-term decisions for short-term products. But I don't think it's all on them.
It's a storied history of Windows projects.
Yeah. That's who I would love to do a story about, like get in deep with people who were on those teams and find out what was really happening and what they were screaming about, what they were upset about, what they thought was going well and didn't, and what they thought went well and did.
I could talk about Windows of the past all day long, just because we've all spent so much time with those things, in those things, and they're, it's such a love to hate them kind of situation.
If only we had a venue for that.
Yeah, if only.
If only.
Maybe someday we'll figure it out. I have one more quick quick answer to the other part. Although, these are interchangeable, really. Like, these could be public, like, podcast discussions or just something I would pick somebody's brain about behind the scenes. I would love to talk to somebody at a visual effects house, ideally one of the biggest ones. Let's say ILM.
Okay.
Because I could basically walk to them right now.
We can arrange that.
In 20 minutes or so. I would love to talk to whoever runs their render farm and their render pipeline.
Oh.
And talk to them about how that has changed over the years, because they've been doing this stuff. Well, they have been doing this stuff since the beginning of it. I guess the Pixars of the world are a little bit newer on the scene, but even they've been around for 20 plus years at this point. Like, I would love to know what they were rendering on back in the day and how that has changed as compute has gotten a lot more democratized. And especially now that GPUs are so powerful, like if that has, because, you heard the stories back in the day of like, oh, one frame of so-and-so took, 3 days to render. Mm-hmm. Or whatever the insane figures were.
It was 3 hours per frame was always the target.
Like, I would love to hear how that stuff has changed and how like the rapid changes in consumer hardware might have affected that stuff.
Have you ever heard the story about Toy Story, how they almost lost Toy Story 2?
No. Oh, it sounds vaguely familiar, but what was the deal?
It's an extra from, I think, the Toy Story 2 DVD. Somebody made a hand-drawn animated short of it. And the long story short is that somebody was on maternity leave and took a copy of Toy Story 2 home on a hard drive so that she could continue working on it. And the server crashed, and they'd never tested the backup restore, and it didn't work when they went to restore the backups.
Ooh.
And so they were like, doing data recovery and this whole thing, and they have a proprietary file system. So like that was going to be impossible to incredibly expensive and time consuming. And they were looking at having to start the movie all over. And finally somebody was like, oh, so-and-so took this home and there's a copy on her workstation at home. So they sent people over to her house in like the biggest car that they had with padded cases and the whole thing to pick up the hard drives, and they took it back to the shop, and they plugged it in and they copied it back over, and they said that's how they saved the movie. But that's not the story that's relevant here. The story that's relevant here is that when they re-released all of those, I couldn't remember which story that was. The story that's relevant is when they re-released all of the old Pixar movies as 3D Blu-rays, they had to re-render the alternate viewing angles. And on the older movies that are rendered on old Irix boxes, SGI boxes, farms of SGI boxes, they didn't have an architecture that could run the code.
Oh, wow.
Like essentially a Pixar movie is like a program that just runs and generates the frames.
Right. It's all custom. They're not just like spitting stuff out of 3ds Max or Maya or something like that, right?
No, yeah. So they spit stuff out of Max, and then it goes into Maya, and then it goes into this render farm, and then the magic happens, and the children's movies come out. And they had to bring back the people who'd worked on that old stuff to
wow.
to figure out how to spin it back up again long enough to make the movie the same. Or in some cases, they just re-rendered it on modern stuff, and it like the 3D versions look a little like they're essentially the same, but there's still some randomness in like the light patterns and stuff like that. So the light patterns on Nemo are different on the
That's
old
wild.
DVD version and the new 4K version.
Huh. That's really fascinating. Can you imagine how afraid the people at Pixar were of Steve Jobs in that interim between losing the movie and recovering it?
I think knowing the people I know that work there, I think they'd have been more upset about like the amount of all of their time that had been wasted.
Oh yeah, and like letting their colleagues down, I'm sure.
Yeah, like the worst Jobs is going to do is yell at you some and then fire you. But like the people who spent 2 years of their life making that thing, man, you just stole 2 years of their life.
Yeah.
That sucks.
Boy, that does not reflect well on whoever was running that backup solution, I guess.
I'll see if I can find the short used to be on YouTube, but I'm sure it's Disney material, so it may not be there anymore. If I can find it, I'll put that in the show notes too.
I have to look that up or hear that because I absolutely live for making of behind the scenes stuff with that kind of detail.
It's a very good story.
I think that might do it for emails, unless you want to.
I think I'm good. I mean, I think we have the emails have been answered.
Yeah, some of them have.
A few.
I've still got a good handful here, though. Maybe we'll just tuck these away for next time.
We have a rainy day. No, you promised another episode, so on Wi-Fi. So if that doesn't go well, then next week some more emails. Keep those emails coming, folks.
Let's hope we don't have to make another game time decision.
techpod@content.town.
Yeah, I mean, there aren't a lot of other 24-hour charity streams coming up for a while, so I think we should have a little more time.
Why do we do this every year, Brad? Is it for the kids?
It's for the kids, man.
I love kids.
It's for the kids. Legitimately a good cause. Like, nobody could argue with that.
It is. It's not like Doctors Without Borders or something that you're like, maybe these people are running heroin or something on the side.
Yikes. I'm sure they do what they have to do to get by.
Don't make that the show title, for the love of God. No, Doctors Without Borders is great. We love them too.
Yes.
But yeah, Extra Life is really good. They do good stuff, and it's worth staying up all night playing video games.
Indeed, yeah.
Well, I guess that does it for us this week. The email address is techpod@content.town.
Yep, that's right.
You can find us at Sweatpants Tech on the Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Will Smith.
I'm Brad Shoemaker.
If you liked the show, mash the review button on iTunes, because turns out the way that you can let people know about a podcast in the future.
Yes, give us likes on things. That's definitely... I'm not going to get into that. That's a whole other topic.
No, yeah, that's a different problem. But also, I bitched about the power being out this weekend. I had the easiest of Northern California, well, California in general, wildfire related problems this week, in that it was dark at my house a little bit, and I had to use a match to light the stove instead of the clicker. The people they evacuated a couple 100,000 people in Northern California because of fires. There are people in the Getty Fire and the Easy Fire and all the others right now that the houses are being destroyed. They're losing everything. So get your disaster kits ready, folks. And I'd love to hear what you put in if you were affected, what you did to send us a note if you have a moment. I'd love to hear how you dealt with blackouts, how you dealt with evacuations, all of that stuff, because I think it's important that we talk about that so that we're all ready when the disasters strike.
It's unfortunate that we have to, but it is definitely something that should be discussed.
Well, I mean, look, climate change is real. We all agree, but disasters, tornadoes. You and I grew up in tornado-y parts of the country. Hurricanes, tornadoes, natural disasters happen all the time, and it's good to be ready for them. And it's easy to do before and almost impossible during. So,
yep.
Anyway, on that cheery note, see you all next week.
Yeah. Hooray. Let's go live life. See you next time.
Bye, everybody.